Remember when you could actually sleep at night without that constant hum of central air? When summer meant open windows and box fans, not a thermostat war? Those houses our parents and grandparents built weren't accidents. They were designed to work with nature, not against it. Today's homes might look sleeker, but they're basically overpriced greenhouses that cost a fortune to keep livable. So what changed? Why did 1970s homes stay cooler without air conditioning? The location and orientation. Back then, builders actually thought about where they put a house. They didn't just bulldoze every tree on the lot and plop down a McMansion facing whatever direction the street ran. Houses in the 1970s and earlier were positioned to take advantage of natural shade and prevailing winds. If you had mature trees on your property, the builder worked around them instead of treating them like inconveniences. The front of the house often faced away from the afternoon sun. In most parts of the country, that meant facing north or east. Why? Because the western sun in summer is absolutely brutal. Those afternoon hours from 2 to 6 would turn west-facing rooms into ovens. Builders knew this, so they oriented houses to minimize that exposure. Trees were worth their weight in gold for keeping houses cool. A large oak or maple on the south or west side of a house could drop the temperature inside by 10 to 15 degrees. The shade wasn't just blocking sunlight, those trees were actually cooling the air around them through transpiration. Modern suburban developments clear-cut everything, then wonder why their houses are so hot. Well, you cut down all your shade, genius. Older neighborhoods understood this instinctively. Drive through any area built before 1980, and you'll see houses nestled under canopies of mature trees. The streets themselves are cooler because of the tree coverage. Now, drive through a new development. It's like driving across a parking lot. Every tree is a pathetic little sapling that won't provide meaningful shade for another 20 years. One retired builder from North Carolina mentioned that his father always walked a property at different times of day before deciding where to site a house. Morning, noon, and late afternoon, checking sun angles, feeling for breezes, noting where natural shade fell. That kind of attention seems quaint now, but it resulted in houses that were comfortable year-round. The windows and their placement. Windows in 1970s homes were positioned strategically, not just punched into walls for aesthetics. The idea was cross-ventilation, creating a path for air to flow through the house. You'd have windows on opposite walls of rooms, often at slightly different heights, to take advantage of hot air rising and cool air sinking. Those tall, narrow windows you see in older homes weren't just decorative. They were designed to catch breezes at different levels. Opening the top sash let hot air escape, while opening the bottom let cooler air in. Double-hung windows gave you control over airflow in a way that modern windows simply don't. You could fine-tune the ventilation by adjusting how far each sash was open. The windows themselves were often smaller than what we have now. Yes, modern houses have those massive floor-to-ceiling windows that real estate agents love to photograph. There are also greenhouses that make your air conditioner run constantly. Smaller windows meant less direct heat gain from sunlight. The glass area was minimized on south and west exposures and maximized on north sides, where you'd get light without the heat. Window placement followed the path of prevailing breezes. If the summer wind typically came from the southwest, you'd have windows positioned to catch that breeze and channel it through the house. Builders would consult with old-timers who knew the local weather patterns. That kind of regional knowledge is lost now that every house is built from the same generic plans. Awnings were standard, not optional. Those fabric or metal covers over windows did exactly what they were supposed to, kept direct sunlight from hitting the glass while still allowing air to flow. You could leave windows open during a light rain because the awning protected them. Try that with your modern picture windows. Awnings could reduce heat gain through a window by as much as 65%. That's not trivial. That's the difference between comfortable and miserable. The awnings were adjustable too. You could roll up fabric awnings in winter to let sunlight in for warmth. Metal awnings had louvers that could be angled. Everything was designed to be managed seasonally, not set once and forgotten. Screens were heavy-duty and fit properly. You could open a window and know that flies and mosquitoes weren't getting in. Modern screens are flimsy afterthoughts that barely stay in their tracks. Back then, screens were part of the design because windows were meant to be open. They were made of actual metal mesh, not the cheap fiberglass that tears if you look at it wrong. Storm windows were common in many regions. Double windows created an insulating air gap in winter, but could be removed or opened in summer. Now we have sealed double-pane windows that can't be serviced when they fail. The old system was more flexible and actually repairable. Shutters weren't decorative. Those hinged panels on the exterior actually closed and provided an extra layer of insulation and sun blocking. Now houses have fake shutters screwed to the siding that couldn't close even if you wanted them to. It's all for show, no function. Real shutters could be closed during the hottest part of the day, turning windows into insulated walls temporarily. Transom windows above doors allowed air circulation even when doors were closed. You'd see these in hallways and above bedroom doors. They let hot air escape from rooms without compromising privacy. Modern houses eliminated these to save a few dollars in construction, then wonder why upstairs bedrooms are stuffy. The deep porches and overhangs. Every decent house had a real porch, not a token concrete slab with 2 posts, but an actual covered porch deep enough to sit on during rain or hot sun. Those porches served multiple purposes. They were outdoor living spaces, but they also protected the house itself. A deep porch on the south or west side of a house kept direct sunlight from hitting windows and walls during the hottest parts of the day. The roof overhang created shade that could extend 6 feet or more from the house. Modern houses have minimal overhangs because they cost money and builders are cheap. But those overhangs saved more in cooling costs than they added in construction. Porches also created a buffer zone of cooler air. The shaded area under the porch roof was significantly cooler than the surrounding yard. This cool zone helped moderate the temperature of the wall behind it. Air flowing into the house through those porch-adjacent windows was pre-cooled by the shade. People actually used their porches in summer. It was cooler than inside during the day, so you'd sit out there with a fan or just a good breeze. Evening meals on the porch, reading on the porch, visiting with neighbors on the porch, it reduced the need to cool the interior because you weren't in there generating body heat. The porch ceiling was often painted light blue, which some people believed kept wasps away, but more importantly, reflected light and helped things feel cooler. The floor would be concrete or wood painted with porch enamel that could handle weather. Everything was built to last and to function. Compare that to modern houses where the porch is barely deep enough to protect the front door. You can't put furniture on it. You can't sit out there in summer sun. It's purely cosmetic, like so much of modern construction. The attic and roof ventilation. Attics in older homes were designed to breathe. Ridge vents, gable vents, soffit vents. There were multiple paths for air to flow through the attic space. Hot air would rise into the attic and exhaust out through these vents, and cooler air would be drawn in from below. It was a natural convection system. Many houses had whole-house attic fans, big, powerful fans mounted in the ceiling of the top floor that would pull air up through the entire house and exhaust it into the attic, where it would escape through the vents. Turn that fan on in the evening, and it would clear out all the hot air that had built up during the day. You'd have a cool house within an hour. One woman from Texas remembered her grandmother's house had an attic fan so powerful it would suck the curtains up toward the ceiling when it was running. You had to open windows downstairs, or it would create a vacuum. But it worked. The house would be comfortable for sleeping, even after a scorching day. The roof itself was often light-colored. White or light gray shingles reflected more sunlight than the dark roofs that are popular now. Yes, dark roofs look more dramatic in photos, but they also absorb more heat. That heat radiates down into the attic and from there into the living space. Attic insulation was adequate, but not the excessive amounts we use now. Why? Because the attic was meant to ventilate, not to be a sealed dead air space. The insulation was between the attic floor and the rooms below, keeping heat from radiating down while letting the attic itself breathe. Modern houses often have sealed attics, tons of insulation, and minimal ventilation. They're entirely dependent on air conditioning because there's no passive cooling system. The attic becomes a heat trap that your AC has to fight against. The construction materials. Houses were built with thick walls, real 2x4s that actually measured 2 inches by 4 inches, not the undersized lumber we get now. That's really 1.5 by 3.5. Plaster walls over lath created thick, dense barriers that didn't conduct heat quickly. Those walls had thermal mass. They'd warm up slowly during the day and cool down slowly at night, moderating temperature swings. The plaster was applied in multiple coats over wood lath strips nailed to the studs. The result was a wall that could be 3/4 of an inch thick or more, not counting the lath and air gaps. That substantial mass that absorbed heat slowly and released it slowly. You couldn't punch a hole in a plaster wall by accident like you can with modern drywall. Modern houses use thin drywall over thin studs with fiberglass insulation that's great in theory, but doesn't provide thermal mass. The walls heat up fast and cool down fast, so you get wild temperature swings unless the AC is running constantly. Drywall is a 1/2 inch of gypsum and paper. There's no mass there to moderate anything. Brick was common for exterior walls in many regions. A brick wall is 8 inches of thermal mass that takes hours to heat through. By the time the exterior heat made it to the interior surface, the outside air was cooling down for evening. Those brick houses stayed cool during the day and released stored heat at night when it didn't matter. A brick house was a temperature battery that evened everything out. Solid brick construction, not brick veneer over wood framing. The whole wall was brick, often 2 layers, with an air gap between. Modern brick is cosmetic facing attached to a regular stick frame wall. It looks like brick, but doesn't perform like brick. Hardwood floors were standard, oak, maple, or pine boards that were 3/4 of an inch thick, nailed to substantial floor joists. Wood doesn't conduct heat the way modern materials do, and hardwood floors could be cleaned easily without carpeting that traps heat and dust. In summer, you could put down light cotton rugs that could be taken up and washed. In winter, you'd add heavier rugs for warmth, flexible and functional. Ceilings were higher. 9 or 10-foot ceilings were common, not the 8-foot ceilings builders cram into modern houses to save on materials and labor. Higher ceilings meant hot air could rise above head level. The room felt more comfortable, even if the upper air was warm, because you were living in the cooler, lower layer. That extra vertical space made a real difference. The increased ceiling height also meant more air volume in the room. More air volume meant the temperature changed more slowly. A small room with low ceilings heats up fast from body heat and activities. A large room with high ceilings absorbs that heat without the temperature spiking. Plaster ceilings were often white or light-colored, reflecting light and heat back up rather than absorbing it. Modern textured ceilings with that popcorn finish absorb both light and heat, making rooms feel warmer and darker. Those smooth plaster ceilings were functional, not just prettier. Roof sheathing was solid wood boards, usually 1-inch thick tongue and groove pine. That created another layer of thermal mass between the shingles and the attic. Modern plywood or OSB sheathing is thinner and has less mass. It heats up faster and transfers that heat more quickly. The attention to materials meant houses lasted longer and performed better without mechanical systems. Modern houses are built to minimum code standards with the assumption that HVAC will compensate for any deficiencies. When that HVAC fails, the house becomes unlivable. Old houses could lose power for days and remain tolerably comfortable if you manage them properly. The daily routines and habits. People adjusted their lives to the weather instead of trying to overpower it with technology. This isn't noble or primitive, it's practical and free. You did laundry and cooking in the morning before the heat of the day. The oven didn't get turned on at 3 in the afternoon. You planned around the temperature. Kitchens often had exhaust fans that actually vented outside. When you cooked, that heat and humidity went out of the house immediately, instead of being recirculated by a modern microwave exhaust fan that just blows it back into the room. Clothes dried on outdoor lines. Nobody ran a dryer that heated up the whole house. You hung wet laundry outside, and it was dry in an hour in summer. Bonus, it smelled better than anything a dryer can do. Modern people think outdoor clotheslines are unsightly. Modern people also complain about high utility bills. Windows were opened at night when temperature dropped and closed in the morning when it started heating up. You managed the house like a ship's captain managing sails, constantly adjusting to conditions. Modern people set a thermostat once and ignore the weather outside completely. Heavy drapes or curtains were closed on sunny windows during the day. Those thick fabrics blocked heat from entering the room. Modern houses have decorative curtains that don't close properly or mini blinds that aren't very effective at blocking heat. People accepted that summer was hot. You dressed in light cotton clothing. You moved slower. You didn't try to maintain February temperatures in August. The human body can adapt to being warmer. We just don't let it anymore. An older gentleman from Arizona recalled that his parents' house had a routine like clockwork, windows closed and drapes drawn by 8 in the morning. Nothing that generated heat used until after sunset. Windows reopened at 9 at night. The house stayed livable all summer without AC, and this was in Phoenix. The basement and foundation. Many 1970s homes had basements, real basements you could walk upright in, not crawl spaces. Basements stayed cool naturally because they were underground. On a hot day, you could retreat to the basement where it might be 20 degrees cooler than upstairs. The basement wasn't finished into living space with carpet and drywall. It was concrete floor and walls, maybe painted, usually left as utility space. That concrete stayed cool, and air from the basement could be circulated upward through the house to help cool upper floors. Homes built on slab foundations in warm climates often had the slab shaded by deep eaves or porches. The slab was designed to stay cool through shading, not to absorb heat. Modern slabs are exposed to direct sun and radiate heat up into the house all evening. Foundation vents allowed air to circulate under the house if it was raised on piers or had a crawl space. That airflow kept the underside from becoming a heat trap. Modern houses often seal those vents year-round, which helps with humidity, but can trap heat. The landscaping. People planted for shade strategically. Fast-growing trees on the south and west sides. Deciduous trees that would provide shade in summer, but let sunlight through in winter after dropping their leaves. This isn't complicated. It's thinking one season ahead. Shrubs planted close to the house provided an insulating air gap and shade for the foundation. Modern landscaping is often decorative rock and minimal plants because that's low maintenance. It's also hot as hell because rock absorbs and radiates heat. Lawns were watered in early morning or evening, not midday. The evaporation from a watered lawn actually cooled the surrounding air. Modern people water whenever, if at all, and wonder why their yard feels like a griddle. Vines on trellises created shade without blocking windows. Morning glories or other climbing plants would cover a sunny wall by midsummer, providing both insulation and evaporative cooling. Now that's considered messy or unkempt. Why we stopped. Air conditioning became cheap and ubiquitous. Once you could cool a house mechanically, all that careful design and thoughtful orientation seemed unnecessary. Builders started cutting corners because they could. Why worry about window placement when the AC will handle it? Houses became commodities built by corporate developers focused on profit per square foot. Those thoughtful touches that made houses livable cost money. Smaller windows, minimal overhangs, no real porches, cheap materials, it all saved money up front. The homeowner paid for it in utility bills forever, but that wasn't the builder's problem. People expected constant comfort. The tolerance for being slightly warm in summer disappeared. We wanted it to be 72 degrees year-round, and technology made that possible. The fact that it's expensive and wasteful didn't matter. Building codes changed. Some improvements were genuine: better insulation, more efficient windows. But the overall philosophy shifted from passive cooling to mechanical cooling. Houses were designed assuming AC would run constantly. Modern appliances generate more heat. Big refrigerators, computers, televisions, phone chargers. We have constant heat sources our grandparents didn't. That makes passive cooling harder, which makes AC seem more necessary, which makes builders care less about passive design. What we lost? We lost the knowledge of how to live comfortably without constant energy input. Our grandparents knew these things instinctively. We become helpless without climate control. We lost the connection to weather and seasons. When you're actively managing your house's temperature through opening and closing windows, drawing curtains, using fans strategically, you're paying attention to the world outside. Modern people can go days without knowing what the weather's doing. We lost porches as living spaces. Those were social spaces where you'd interact with neighbors. Now we've retreated into climate-controlled boxes and wonder why nobody knows each other. We lost durability. Houses built to function without AC were built tougher because they had to be. Modern houses are flimsy boxes that fall apart without constant HVAC maintenance. The environmental cost is staggering, but that's not nostalgia talking. That's just math. The electricity we use to cool poorly designed houses comes from somewhere, usually coal or natural gas. Our grandparents' houses had a smaller carbon footprint without even trying. Could you live like this now? Probably not entirely. Modern life has different demands, but there's no reason new houses couldn't incorporate these passive cooling strategies along with modern materials and systems. Solar panels on those deep overhangs, strategic tree planting, proper window orientation, real porches. The knowledge isn't lost, it's just ignored. Builders know how to design cool houses without AC. They just don't, because it costs more upfront, and buyers are seduced by square footage and granite countertops over functional design. Those 1970s homes stayed cooler without air conditioning because they were designed by people who understood that working with nature is smarter than fighting it. We've replaced that understanding with brute force technology and monthly electric bills that would have horrified our grandparents. Maybe it's time to remember that being slightly warm in summer isn't actually an emergency, that a breeze through open windows feels better than recycled air from vents, that sitting on a porch beats sitting in front of a screen. The old ways weren't perfect, but they worked. And they didn't require selling your soul to the power company. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, like and subscribe for more stories about how things used to work and why they worked better than you might think.